basketball game last night that people were all fired up about as well. The Sixers at one point were up by 29 in that game. All right? And all of a sudden, they kind of took their foot off the gas. And pandemonium broke loose on social media, if you didn't notice. Why do people do that to themselves? Why do people do that to themselves? This is the NBA. This happens on a nightly basis. You get a big lead, you take your foot off the gas, and then the team kind of gets back in the game. They secured the win, and it was ugly. All right, move on. Why do people get so angry? I don't get it. Were you one of those people?
I was not one of those people. I was disappointed that it happened because they did allow it to happen, but big picture-wise, I do not see the relevance in terms of what this means when Ben Simmons is available or anything like that.
All right. So Keith Smith covers the NBA, Yahoo Sports. We have our weekly conversation where, Keith, if you were in this market on a night-to-night basis, you would just see the most ridiculous kind of commentary of all time. I mean, all you got
gets that in Boston too, though,
Yeah, it's to some extent, but, all of a sudden, the Sixers last night, they won the game. Yeah, they got a little sloppy down the end, but this is a second-round exit again. The coach is terrible. They're not good enough. I mean, what do you make of a game on a Wednesday night in February like that where you're coming off that long road trip and you come home, you're up big, and then it gets a little dicey late in that game?
First thing I'll say is Brody is right, covering the Celtics. Every time they lose, it's fire everybody, trade everybody. Now it's even started into Tatum and Brown, worth keeping. There are Celtics fans who are convinced this team's not going to make the playoffs. So I think, unfortunately, covering Northeastern-based teams, we live in the land of overreaction. When you're trapped in your home for 6 months out of the year with nothing else to do, you invest heavily in the sports teams. But from Philadelphia's perspective, they won. It doesn't, it doesn't matter. There's no reason to get all, reactionary about all this stuff right now. They're still in first place in the conference. They look pretty good. I know the Nets are creeping up behind them. But at this point, I think a lot of people thought that the Sixers might be, third, fourth place in the conference. So they've outplayed the expectations of many. And I know that doesn't mean a lot to people because people will come back and say, well, yeah, but you got to reset those. And there is some truth and fairness to that. But I think they're fine. Everybody is going through bumps in the road this year, more so than any other season that I can ever remember.
Yeah, now, they didn't have Simmons last night. Now, the night before, Simmons played and scored 42, and then you know how that goes. Well, why can't he do this more often? And then last night, they don't have him, and then Embiid has, just an okay game. He wasn't tremendous last night, but watching them the last two games, one with Simmons, one with Embiid, now they played well with both of them this year, but does it make you go back to that thought of, maybe they'd be better without the two of them together, or not necessarily?
No, not necessarily. Yeah, I think it is tough. There are definitely things that work better when they're not out there together. I think one of the first things that comes to mind is they get to kind of operate in their spaces a little bit more. Still, even this year where they're playing better than I can remember, they still kind of run into each other a little bit too often on the offensive end because that they both want to be in and around the basket area. But I think that the challenge ultimately comes in with these guys is if they're going to be the team that everybody wants them to be this year, you need both of them. You need to have both guys doing things at a high level to be the best team you're going to be. And I still trust, like I have for any number of years, that they're going to get that figured out and it'll all be okay.
And what's crazy is Gil just said, and he's not wrong, though. Like, Embiid was all right last night. He had 31, 11, and 9 assists. He was one assist shy of a triple-double. So I just want to get your thoughts on the fact that just happened. Like, that's how great Embiid has been.
He did. You're right. His final numbers ended up being really big. He was very slow getting there, and then I guess once the team was up, they needed him a little bit more. But he only had 12 in the third, right?
Yeah, he started out with 8 in the first half. But I just, just the fact that right there we can say, just kind of a night for Embiid. He was one assist shy of a triple-double.
Yeah, and the assists, I don't want to demean the scoring and the rebounding, but the assists are the impressive part there because this is a guy who even, as recently as a year ago couldn't really handle a double team. it felt like more often than not, it ended up in a turnover or some, kind of pass that was thrown to nowhere, that nothing productive. Now I think what's happened is I think the benefit of him playing consistent minutes, game to game, he's not playing a game, sitting a game, playing a game, sitting a game. Now he's seeing these double teams. He can read where they're coming from before they get there, and he's making really good plays very quickly. And, I just did another spot right before your show, and they asked me to pick a first half MVP, and my pick is Joel Embiid. That's nothing against LeBron James or any of those guys, but I think Embiid has just been an absolute monster. I think he's showing a level of dedication this season that we haven't seen out of him, and he is absolutely dominating because of it.
Hey, you mentioned Boston, and I want to get your thoughts on what is going on up there because, this is a team that's about 500 right now, and it's funny because these two teams have been so linked because of that Fultz trade, and everybody figured out, look what, Boston didn't have to do a process, and they've been in the Eastern Conference Finals, but I don't know. It seems that they're all of a sudden got the arrow pointing down a little bit, and Philly's bypassed them.
Yeah, absolutely. So far this season, that is spot on. The Celtics, I said this last night, the only thing they've been consistent at is being inconsistent. They have been this year, they got it going a little bit early in the year, and then they got shut down for a week due to COVID. And ever since then, it has basically been win one, lose one, win two, lose two, and that's just been the way it has gone. And at that point, what happened was when they got shut down due to COVID, right on the heels of that, Kemba Walker came back, but then Jason Tatum was out. Then they got Tatum back and Marcus Smart was out. Walker still can't play both ends of a back-to-back. Jaylen Brown is now dealing with some knee soreness. Tatum and Brown both look like they're tired, and I think that's growing out of they carried a very heavy load in last year's playoffs because Gordon Hayward was injured for the majority of the postseason and Walker wasn't himself, and then picked right back up a couple months later and right back into, carry this heavy load again because now Hayward's gone and Walker was out for the better part of the first month of the season. So I think what you're seeing with the Celtics is it's these guys being out and just that, glaring lack of consistency with the lineups. And then the roster construction is not great. Danny Ainge held on to all those picks for so long without making any moves. He was right to do that with Tatum and Brown, and we'll see on a couple of the other guys. But a couple of those picks have not panned out, and they just do not have the depth that they need to get through these periods when other guys are missing.
Speaking of Danny Ainge, do you think that he pulls the trigger on some sort of big move to maybe try and fix some things?
I do. So he did local radio today, and this was the second time in the last 2 weeks that he has come out pretty strongly. And what it was before was he basically, without criticizing any individuals, he talked about the team doesn't play hard enough. They don't defend. They're very inconsistent, that the younger players don't really know what it takes. Today, he doubled down on those things. And then his exact quote, if I'm getting this right, was, "We are not a championship team. We're at least a piece or two away." Now, I think he recognizes Tatum and Brown are probably good enough to get you there if you can get the right pieces around them. Kemba Walker is still pretty good. He's starting to figure it out, starting to get his rhythm back. People overreacted to that after how long he was out. It was going to always take him a little bit of time. But now what I think Ainge is looking at is saying, yeah, I need to do what I can to supplement this roster and get us going. And I think the challenge is fans want that today. But we are 5 weeks from the trade deadline. So we are still a long way away. And because of that, there's not a lot of sellers out there. So as much as he may want to make a move today, there's just not a lot of trading partners to get with. So give it a couple more weeks, get about 3 weeks out from the deadline, and I think you're going to start to see some action. And I do think you're going to see Boston make moves this time around.
Hey, what is your take right now on what's going on with Milwaukee? They've lost 4 in a row. Their whole thing is, well, we're not going to emphasize the regular season as much, I guess. They're 16-12, but I look at the minutes here, and, Giannis still plays his same amount of minutes, if not more. So what's your take on what's going on with the Bucks?
Yeah, there's two things. This year, they are only playing about 9 guys most nights. which I think is going to be actually a benefit to them in the playoffs, because last year when they lost to Miami, Mike Budenholzer came out and said, I can't push Giannis and Middleton and the others up to 40 to 45 minutes, because in the regular season they played between 25 and 30. And this year those guys are playing between 30 and 35. So stepping them up to 35, 40, 45 minutes isn't as big of an ask. The other piece is they have been routinely criticized for not being able to make adjustments and go to anything different on both ends of the floor. They run what they run, they do what they do. And now what you're seeing with them is they're trying some different stuff. Sometimes it doesn't work. They're running different defenses, and sometimes it looks pretty ugly. Their defense has slipped from right at the top of the league all the way down to the middle of the pack. But part of that, I think, is we're going to find these other things we may be able to go to, and then when we ask the players to execute a different kind of scheme, hopefully it'll be there for us. They realize the last couple of years winning 1 million regular season games does absolutely nothing for you in the playoffs. It's all about being ready to play in the postseason. So I think they are, the latest in a very long line of teams that are at a point where, hey, we got to be at our best in the postseason, because that's when it really matters. And I think you're really starting to see them do some different stuff that's costing them games right now, but I think it will pay off better in the long run.
He's Keith Smith, NBA writer from Yahoo Sports, and obviously this Eastern Conference is starting to get interesting because the Nets are playing some better basketball too. So you have Sixers, Nets, Bucks, all up at the top right now. Boston and their troubles, as he just kind of chronicled. We'll keep our eye on all things NBA. And, of course, he, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Keith, appreciate it, man.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. You guys stay safe and warm up there.